Hello everyone and welcome to Sure Out Podcasts. I'm your host Ross Baxter and today is episode 18 of the series. Today we've got amazing guests for you. We've got an incredible artist. We've got Tobias Koepp. Is that how you pronounce it, Tobias?
It's pretty close. It's a cup.
It's always been an interesting one when it comes to like names. I'm getting better at it, especially being Scottish. So thanks for coming on, man. It really means a lot. So, as always on the Sure Out Podcast, if you're listening in, we are live on 9 different platforms. So we're currently live on YouTube, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Overcast, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, and finally Stitcher. So if you're new to the podcast, we always talk about student education and hear about the guest journey as a whole, so what they do and what got them into art and so forth. And the new thing we've been doing on the podcast is making sure all you artists share your links in the description below. And what I'll do is give you a shout out in the next podcast and sharing your artwork on my social medias. So this week's shout out is Gabriel Utedo. So I'll include Gabriel's artwork in the start of the podcast to briefly show you what he's been working on, and I'll share your work, man, in the podcast later on as well. But let's just get straight into the podcast, Tobias. So thanks once again for coming on. Just tell us a wee bit about yourself, what you do, and where you're at the moment.
So, hi. My name is Tobias Koepp. I'm currently working in Stockholm, Sweden, at a mobile company called King. So we make all sorts of casual games you've probably played.
Yeah.
But before I was, I've traveled around a bit. So I've been working in the UK at a studio called Cold Sync. We've been doing like mobile games, VR games. Before that, I was working in Spain at an outsourced studio, working on a couple of games, making assets. And like in the meantime, I've been freelancing a little bit. Worked on the Spyro game that just came out, and some other small projects.
That's awesome. Like I was checking through like all the different types of games you've been working on. Like I've been like so jealous. Like the style, because the style of work you make is like it's really cool. Like you've got like that's also like one of the main things as well when it comes to like the podcast as well. Is like I think so many artists struggle with is like finding like that style, and you can clearly tell like the style that you've been working on. Like it's awesome.
Thanks.
And then I also saw you've worked on Call of Duty, so you've worked at Activision as well. So that's literally my favorite game. So can't go wrong there.
Cool. Well, that was my first job. So it was we were part of this outsourced studio where like companies would just like brief us with like tasks what to do, and we were just making lots of assets for these games, and that was like my first experience. So very scary, very
daunting.
But it was definitely a nice experience.
So has it always been environment art that you've been into, or has it always started through environment art, or was there like something else that you're interested in to start off with?
I mean, when I really just started, I of course had no idea which I liked the most. But I think at some point I wanted to be like an animator or like a character artist. But
oh, right, okay.
Yeah, but I mean that was before I did even anything in 3D. So it's kind of like, what do I do? But then like along the way, I was really like, no, like I like the worlds you play, and I like the levels. I really like level design, and I like the storytelling you can do in an environment, and just going like if you play a game and you are somewhere, it's just this feeling you have when you're in the world. It's really cool. So that's why I kind of became environment artist.
Awesome. So like whenabouts did it start? Like how long have you been doing 3D for?
So I've worked in games now for 4.5 years or something. Okay. And before that, my studies were like 4 years. And this is also where I learned 3D when I started studying, basically.
So, like also obviously one of the main things when it comes to the podcast, I always talk about like the studying aspect and stuff. So you studied, let me see, it is so a bachelor's degree in game architecture and design. So was that very... Because obviously there's like so many different titles for different courses and stuff. So like,
yeah, exactly.
So what did that involve when you did that?
So it sounds really like architecture and design is.
Yeah.
I think it's just a fancy name for like studying game art,
Right,
because it just really involved like a general overview of like everything you can imagine, like from character art to making environments to even like rendering still images, which I never do. Or anatomy, so like a bit of everything, and you kind of have to pick like what you really like throughout this. For me, it was 4 years, and then find a way to like specialize in that.
So it's like very similar to like, so obviously I'm in Scotland, so it's very similar. So like your 4 year degree, then you have like, I guess the first few years was basically about finding like the niche that you wanted to work in basically.
Yeah,
And then it kind of tailored off to focusing, like you said, onto like something you're interested in basically.
exactly. They kind of offer you a bit of everything, and
Mm-hmm.
then hopefully, I guess, you find something you like at the like during that time. If not, then you might have a problem.
Awesome. As always, on the Shooter podcast, I always kind of have like these 4 questions that I've always built things around, and I've sent them to you. So it'd be great just to start off with the first one, if that's okay.
Sure.
So obviously, one of the main things is always about like university, online courses, just the course itself. But the first question is, what do you wish you learned when you were studying at university? Is there anything that kind of stands out to you, I guess?
So I guess like there would be two things. The first one's very specific for like at the time when I studied.
Mm-hmm.
We were kind of I was finishing studies when like the whole PBR thing became really like a lot more common.
Okay.
So this is something I had to like teach myself after university. But I think like it's important for schools to be like very, very current and also look at like future trends and
Mm-hmm.
try to include that in their curriculum. And I think the second thing is just like money, how learning how much you're worth, and how like a bit more of the business sides of like being what being an artist means as for like getting paid, for example.
Definitely. Like that's like I'm really happy you brought that one up because like that's another one is like there's so many students out there who don't know where they lie in terms of like the like almost like the what's it called when you're like the like for example like the fish line. I'm not sure what you call it, but it's like where you lie money wise. Like are you a beginner? Like how much do you think you deserve to be paid?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
where's your skill set at? And it's also like you said about like the software. Like software is such a like I know so many people talk about it, but when it comes to like being up to date, it's always been I think it's hard for especially when it comes to the UK anyway, is that I still feel like they're 5 years behind when it comes to like the software in terms of like the teaching, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Like you said, when you were studying like PBR, so like learning, for example, Substance Painter, Substance Designer, and so forth, like all these different texturing, like for example, in Scotland, I was fortunate where I went to in terms of like they had all the software there, but it was just down to I guess getting the right teaching because it was very, I guess for myself, it was very independent learning based. If that makes sense.
yeah, exactly. It's also I think like the teachers you have there, like when have they last worked in the industry and like
Yeah.
how good are they with like catching up or like actually talk to like the studios because
Mm-hmm.
that's where you want to go. So if there's no like communication in between, then you might have like a really outdated course.
Definitely. So would you say based on where you went in terms of like being up to date, were you say you're like was it far behind or would you say it wasn't too bad?
I don't think it was too far behind. It was just like I felt like there was just this change going on,
Mm-hmm.
which could have been predicted, but it wasn't really, or like I was almost done with studying when that happened,
Mm-hmm.
so I kind of had to catch up with that myself.
So I guess one of the main things we're just trying to say here to everyone who's listening basically is like obviously be prepared and understand where you need to go because the main thing I've always realized because so I'm 23 now and the one thing I've learned because I finished university I think 18 months ago now and basically with me it was always about knowing where I needed to be, knowing what I needed to learn and finding the truth as like quickly as possible. And I think one of the hard things, I guess, when it comes to just the industry as a whole, is that I guess so many studios like use so many different softwares. Like everyone has like their own kind of pipeline. But I guess the main thing to realize is that there is kind of like a routine that everyone's having. Like no Substance Painter, kind of like that's kind of like taken over Mari. Understand sculpting. There's a lot of things that are very consistent that you have to kind of learn to acknowledge. So no, that's awesome. Thanks for saying all that. So the next question on the podcast is: did university teach you how to be ready for the industry? So this is very similar to what you were just saying when it comes to studying wise as well. But is there anything that you think it could have prepared you a bit better?
I think so. To be ready for the industry when like I think that's a hard question. I mean, their job is to give you like a certain like skill set, and for me it was a very basic skill set, but then I could expand on that like on my own. I think I had like an entire year almost to do my own project at university, and then I also like had an internship in between. So I think yes, they taught me how to be ready because they like being there helped me like get my first internship, for example. So yes, I worked during studying, but then like after I was done, I think it took me like half a year to find a job, and
That's good. That's awesome. That's really
yeah,
quick.
yeah, it's not that bad, but it's you definitely need to do more than they just like offer you in terms of like the material, and like I think it's half of doing the actual studying, and then like maybe the other half is like actually figuring out what you want to do for yourself and put some personal time in.
Yeah, because like with me, it's always been like I've never tried to rush the process, if that makes sense. I think so many people, I guess, when they finish university, they put this kind of this burden on themselves, like I need to get in the industry as fast as possible.
Yeah,
Which like I can make sense in the sense that maybe you're in a situation where I guess you don't have the money, like financially wise, or you just want to, I guess, get the ball rolling. And like for me personally, I've always been right. So I want to focus on my portfolio. What do I need to do to get to like the industry that I want to get into? And I've just prioritized using time as an advantage. And I'm kind of fortunate in the sense that so I live at the moment. I'm with my dad, and I'm just focusing on finishing my art piece. And I've actually just finished an art piece at the moment. I've been working on
nice.
like this train piece. Oh my god, it's been taking ages, man.
Uh,
It's I think it's like 6.5 months I've been working on this piece.
oh wow.
It's I think it's just because like so I just work my normal job as well, so I'm just doing like that full time, and then
Yeah.
you have like your daily routine that you're trying to I guess base your artwork around, and I've just been like non-stop working at this piece, but I'm so glad it's finished. It's such a
Like
relief.
making your own game for 6.5 years, months.
I know, oh, it's mental, but I'm not sure when it comes to like for example, you'll know yourself, like working on your personal piece, like that's like the main fun, if you know what I mean, like doing like your own kind of stuff.
Mm.
Like that's where like the main passion comes along. But
Yeah, I mean, that's when you are free from any constraints where you can just like do what you're not able to do like on your job or anything. Yeah.
so like for example, obviously you've got your own like your own art style and stuff, but has that always been like a thing? Did you kind of know where you wanted to go? Because obviously you've worked on like games and like Call of Duty and stuff. Like it's a big contrast there in terms of like the stuff you worked on.
I mean, on the job, I guess you can't always do the style you want, or projects can change. Especially when I worked like in an outsourced studio, there was like, okay, now we're working on this Call of Duty game, and then suddenly no, you work on this mobile game, which is like completely different style wise. So I think being okay with adapting or switching styles is quite important. But then when I work on my personal stuff, it's like it's completely stylized because that's like kind of what I like, what I want to do.
Yeah.
And if I show people like my portfolio, what they see, like when they look at it, it's like, okay, this is what I'd like to do, and I don't want to show them anything that I'm like not completely behind with, because that's not what I really want to do.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point as well, because like I think obviously it's because I didn't really I wouldn't say I didn't get taught it when I was studying in college, university, but I'm not sure if you've heard of this artist. So one of my favorite artists is a guy called John Troy Nickel,
Yeah.
and so basically he does like this very unique art style for characters. And I was listening to one of his streams, and basically what he said was like it's so obvious, but I think a lot of beginner students overlook it, is knowing what to put on your portfolio. And like they showcase things that I guess not like they're not just not on the right level, but they're not highlighting exactly what they want to do. And you have to be careful when it comes to that. Like obviously it's good to show range, like you said. Like sometimes you're doing things that maybe you're not so passionate about, but it's important to learn those things as well. But it's like you said, it's if you're going to put stuff on ArtStation, if it is ArtStation you're looking at that you're using as your website, make sure to put things on there that you enjoy, that you're passionate about. And I think it's always the goal to strive for the things that you're looking at, because you can definitely like you can definitely see in your artwork like you're like destined for king. Like you could just be like, yep, Tobias, that's the go-to guy for king. You can just see like your art style is just like perfect for them. And
yeah, I think I kind of agree with that you should show what you like, but I can understand like if you're just starting out and you don't have much artwork, that you would probably put like anything on it, like anything you've done at uni, or like I guess, while you're learning. But I think after you've been in this for a while, like in this industry, then you should really show people what you're passionate about, because I think people see if someone likes what they do versus like someone who just like puts stuff on their portfolio, which they just do it because they have to.
Hmm. So would you say like the range is important when it comes to being, I guess, like trying to get the job, or do you think it's better just to be like, right, this is the kind of art that I want to make, or do you think it's good to have both?
I think, like, I mean, if you're really, if you're looking for your first job,
Hmm.
it's probably not the job you want to want, or
Yeah,
like it's probably not going to be your dream job. Show just show that you have range. Show people that you can do a lot of things. You probably not. I mean, if you're just starting out your first job, you don't have the experience. So uh, show people that you can do lots of things. Kind of be like a generalist, and then I think you will have more options.
definitely. Because I think like one of the things like this was a definitely like a, I wouldn't say it's a mistake, but it's a thing that I was like, do you know when you're a student, you kind of have this like mindset, like, oh, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, like I'm gonna become the best at this and stuff, and then you kind of like overlook like the smaller studios, and you've,
Yeah, exactly.
it's like I guess it's one of the biggest faults most students tend to do. Like they're very like obviously like you want to be optimistic, you want to have this sort of passion, you want to be going like I want to get to this studio. However, so many students they overlook the obvious, and like they kind of lose sight of like the smaller studios that like they're still making great work. And the good thing about smaller studios is that you're more involved, and you have more chance to do a range of things. Obviously, sometimes, like for example, one of my friends, he's a character artist,
Hmm.
and one of the things that I was really shocked that he actually does some rigging, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And like he's a really good character artist, but like I was really surprised. Like you do learn more about the pipeline, and if you're a student and you're listening in, like at the end of the day, like being able to understand people's workflow is crucial. Like it plays a good part, and it's like the whole idea of teamwork at the end of the day. Like you're working with people, and you're understanding what they do. So it's always crucial.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course. Sorry, if you're like a character artist and you know about animation, you know about rigging, that makes you like already so much more valuable to the team than like someone who's just sculpting, for example. Like this
definitely.
expanded skill set is just it's really good.
And like you said as well, you said earlier like you had like an original interest for like animation,
Mm.
and like just having that original like passion is like it makes it easier for you to get involved and stuff. Awesome. So on to the next question. So one of the main things that I always like to cover is like obviously there's always this like contrast between online courses and I guess just university as a whole. But one of the main things I like to highlight because I went to university is like what are the main benefits that stood out to you? Obviously, like there's like different types of learning, but it obviously depends on the learning as well. But is there anything that kind of highlight to you why you should go to university?
I think just even without all the stuff you learn, and I think it's just like about meeting people and starting to build your network of, because all the people you're there with, they could be your new colleagues, or
Hmm.
they can be the people who get you a new job. So it's like really good to build up this network of well, then non-professionals, but then it will change in a couple of years. So this is really awesome.
Yeah.
And I don't know, for me, it was also really great because I was studying. So I'm from Germany and I studied in the Netherlands. So I spent 4 years in a different country, which also is like such a life experience,
Hmm.
which is like not even related to studying. It's just like it was great. And then, of course, I think it depends on like the kind of person you are. But if you have a problem like being motivated to do anything like on your own, going to university is kind of forcing you to do all this stuff, and maybe keeps you on track a bit better than, because some people I know won't even start an online course because no one really makes them to.
All right,
So,
as in like getting like that sort of like motivation just to get on with it, basically.
exactly.
Yeah, that's
But I think it depends on the person.
yeah, of course. Like I think it's like I'm not sure what your thoughts when it comes to artists in general, but do you think very like I think most artists are very introvert, or very well not introvert, but is introvert like very shy or very independent,
Uh-huh.
and like I'm kind of I guess different in that sense because like my whole child upbringing was sport. I was very just like non-stop sports, so very I'm just a very competitive kind of person,
Yeah.
and I guess when I was in university, it was very I wouldn't say it was interesting, but it was very strange seeing like everyone's kind of different type of mindset to approaching things, and like one of the main things I've always liked to do with this podcast, I guess, is kind of like get people out of their shell and just kind of open up a wee bit.
Uh-huh.
And obviously, like you're saying about like the teamwork and stuff, and meeting new people, like that gets you out of your shell. It gets you more involved. It grows you as a person. And one of the main things, I guess, that plays such a huge part that I've learned through the podcast and just by talking to so many people is, like you said, it is the networking aspects. Like for example, me reaching out to you. Like if I didn't reach out to you, I wouldn't be able to like just hear your story and stuff, and that came through like learning how to ask questions. And one of the main things I always preached growing up was just ask questions. Know how, like, doesn't matter how stupid it sounds, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's funny that how small this industry can be sometimes, because then you know someone who knows someone, and like it's like when you go to an event or something, you probably know someone from somewhere, and it's really it's a tight community, and it's good to just be friendly with each other.
And like the crazy thing as well, like I wouldn't say as similar to you, but like one of the awesome things I've realized just by talking to you just now. So obviously you're from Germany, and you then went to Holland to study, and now you're in Sweden working. So it's like that's like obviously like another great thing about this industry is that you get to like you said, meet new people, but traveling, like do different experiences as well.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's something, I don't know, you have to do it. It's because I don't know, like if you want to progress with like your career or something, then like staying at one place or might not be the best idea, or like in terms of like career jumps. But it's also like for me it was finding the right project or like the kind of work you want to do. But because like when I started out, I was like taking the jobs because I had a job, so the requirements are a bit different now. So like I'm now, after a couple of years, it's easier to find something you like. And in the beginning, you're just like, okay, I have to have work somewhere. Where is the job? And I go to the job.
Yeah, it's just always. Oh, sorry, on you go.
No, and then the other side is then like freelancing is kind of the opposite, where then like I think after a couple of years I got more freelance opportunities, and then I could just work from wherever I was. So it kind of changes over time.
So would you say, like, this is always like the big debate? Do you think experience is obviously like they go hand in hand, but would you say experience is more important than portfolio, or like how would you distinguish the two of them?
I think so far no one really, like whenever I interviewed for a job, like the portfolio was always more important than what kind of experience I had.
All right, okay.
It's more like if you talk to like the recruiter or something, they are always very interested in like where have you been, what have you done. But if you then talk to like the actual artists who hire you, it's more about your work, from my experience.
Yeah, like I think one of the hardest things I've struggled with is that when it comes to identifying, I guess, kind of like the truth behind everything in terms of like how they work or how they judge things, is that, so obviously they have the recruiters and stuff. Like I'm not. It'll be great to hear your aspect on this. So are the recruiters like artists, or are the recruiters like human resource people? Like how is it, like based on your experience, have you noticed any like sort of system to it?
I mean that also depends on the company. Like some companies don't even have recruiters. They have like just people who are like, hey, we need an artist, and then people are looking for someone, or maybe they know someone.
Yeah.
But I know like also from other places that the recruiters talk to like your art manager or someone who's in charge of like who we need to hire, and then they get some requirements, and then that's the info they're going to use to look for something, and then there will be a lot of conversations, like sending portfolios to like your art director or something, and then he will look at it. But they're not. I think they have some knowledge about art, but they're not usually artists. They're like human resources, so it's a whole different field.
Like I think like one of the great things I think I wish maybe university started doing was like actually, instead of like taking artists to like do a presentation, like take a recruiter just to hear like their perspective. Because I think one of the hard things is that, well, I guess is actually the reason why maybe like the bigger studios do this, but so they hire these recruiters because not necessarily because they understand art, but probably because they understand, right, they've been given a checklist to do, and like they get, I guess, exactly what they're looking for, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think they just take the workload of like the art director, for example, like they just look for so many people, get so many portfolios, do some sort of like sorting them and then send them over, and then your art director will get back at them and just choose a couple, and then you start the interviews. So it's probably just shifting the workload.
Awesome. So carrying on with like the same question, because there's like a lot of things we could like dwell into this. So obviously one of the main things is networking and stuff, and learning, and I guess like social medias and stuff. Do you think like what are the benefits that you've learned from networking and social media? Has like for example Twitter or ArtStation or just like getting yourself out there played a big part in getting jobs for you?
I think I thought about this recently. Like with the whole networking, like when I just started, I was still like in school or like in uni. I would go to, there was still the GDC in Germany.
Oh right, okay, awesome.
Yeah, so I was working there like as a volunteer, so I could go there. And then I know, like with also so many other students, we would just like hand out our business cards and exchanging business cards and just do all this. But then it's super useless. Like it's nothing ever happens from that.
Okay.
But it's just like when you go networking, I think it's just like just be friendly with each other and just talk, and like all the good stuff, like the jobs or something, those opportunities will arise. But like I think it's more important to get to know people, and then in the long run there could be opportunities from that. But just I would think of networking more with like actually expanding your friend network.
Yeah, because like I think that's when it like a lot of students have this sort of habit of like I have it myself. Like I'm not gonna lie, it's like so I always like obviously like ask questions all the time, and I ask lots of different artists. Like for example, just asking people to come on the podcast.
Yeah.
It involves me obviously reaching out to people who like obviously that I don't know of, like who like they've never met me before, and in order for me to, I guess, gain their trust, I have to develop I wouldn't necessarily a fan base, but like a relationship with my audience and also my guests that show that they can trust me. And one of the main things I guess artists have kind of, I wouldn't say like they fall into the trap of, but I think they rely on too many like they ask so many questions to a point that it doesn't involve any artwork, if that makes sense. Or they don't specialize on focusing on the artwork. So I've always been preached, it's artwork at the end of the day that counts. It's nothing, like the degree means nothing at the end of the day. I know obviously it's important and it's good to show that you've got a degree, but at the end of the day it's showing that you can do the work. And it's always been a portfolio thing that I guess it gets obviously getting now introduced into like the workflow at universities that you just have to create like really good solid artwork. However, I still think there's still like this issue in which people are kind of like trying to find like an easier way around it, and it's not benefiting anyone, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, the degree's nice, but I've never had to like show it to anyone.
Yeah, like it's crazy though. It's like that's when you said at the start, like the money aspect as well. It's I think like the reason why you go to university, and it's what everyone's been saying on the podcast, and it's what you said just a few minutes ago. It's to meet people. It's to get to.
Yeah.
It's to develop those contacts, develop that foundation to kind of get you on your way, I guess. So like there's like all those different things that you benefit from going to university, and I think that's the thing as well when it comes to university. It's like obviously you go to university to gain connections as well and stuff, but don't lose sight of the importance of like make sure you have a good reputation. Like a lot of people forget that, and like make sure that you're nice to everyone. And it's what Tobias was saying. It's like the industry is so small. Don't forget about that, because it's
Yeah.
It bites against you. I'm not sure if you've heard of any interesting stories, but to me,
Of course. Oh yes, of course. I mean, if it's you hear something and then the word travels fast. So yeah, don't be a dick.
Exactly. Like I'm not sure. I'm trying to think if you I've forgotten the guy's art. The name of the artist. Do you know basically he's the lead character artist at Insomniac Games. Oh, I'm trying to remember his name. But anyway, he actually does a podcast called the Character Art Podcast. And,
yeah, Kevin Golden, I think.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's the one. And he told me well, this was the most insane story I've ever heard. So basically, what happened, right? So he was doing an interview for character artists, and basically a guy who actually applied stole his own artwork and applied for that job there. Like, oh my god, like gee whiz. Like, he actually used, like, the main character artist at the studio's work and said he did that. Like, I was like, wow.
Oh, wow. That's I never heard about that, but that's crazy.
Like that's like the ultimate like that guy's name is now being sent across everyone. So number one rule, folks, don't steal people's work.
No, no, don't steal. It's a bad idea.
It's like gee whiz, like when I heard that story, like, I just couldn't believe that. I was like, gee whiz, that's either having like balls of steel or just being insanely stupid. But like well, I guess like obviously like the other main question I've always asked on the podcast. Obviously like there's like I said between online courses and university. But have you had any, like I know you've done quite a few awesome tutorials yourself. Have you done any like online courses or found any benefits from online courses that you think maybe have a slight advantage over student education?
I mean, so I don't know, like the cost, of course, of online courses is so much cheaper than going to university. I don't know like how expensive it is in the UK or,
Mm-hmm.
but I know like when I studied, it was okay, like it wasn't too expensive, but I guess in Europe it's not that big of a problem. But of course, like if you can have an online course like that costs like $15 or something, that's super awesome, and you get so much out of it.
Yeah.
But I guess for some you need a good foundation, but then there's also online courses that teach you the whole thing from scratch. So I can see why people don't have to go to university and just learn it by themselves.
Yeah, because like so one of the things I invested in recently, so it was the Gnomon workshop,
Yeah.
and so like at the end of the day, well this I'm not sure what your thoughts are on this. So one of the main things I've kind of always realized, even I had this habit, but a lot of artists are very secretive about sharing knowledge,
Hmm.
and I think this is one of the slight benefits of online courses. Like obviously it involves you investing, but that's the advantage because obviously if you invest the money, you're going to get more of the information that you kind of need. And I think when it comes to like for example, just teaching in general, because obviously you're at the end of the day you're an artist. Like you want to have an advantage over others, but obviously it's a teamwork thing. So you need to work efficiently as a team and make sure like you said, like you're not a dick. You have to be able to work with each other. But one of the issues I've always wished more artists were better at was sharing things more
Hmm.
and like not being so precious at like their workflow and stuff or like giving anything away because at the end of the day it's like no one's gonna really like gain like massive like they're not gonna instantly take over you by just learning like a cool technique if that makes sense. It comes down to you as an artist.
Yeah, no, that's true. But I can also see it depends also where you work. Like for some people, if you work at a certain company, you're really not allowed to share anything or like share any like workflows that could get you into trouble or
Oh right.
anything. So I think for some people, it's just like they would like really like to share, but they're just not allowed.
Yeah, I never really thought about that from that perspective. That's giving me no, because that'll help for other podcasts as well. Because I wish it like it'd be great to have like a podcast in which like I could have like both sides of like the secretive side or like, but obviously like they'll never be able to share it if that makes sense. Like it'd be great to hear like the ins and
You
outs
could
of
change
everything.
their voice and make them anonymous or something.
Yeah, oh, just not have any, like every time I bring on a guest, don't share their name. Just be like, tell me all your knowledge and like I'll be oh gosh I'd be like I would never get hired ever again. That would screw me for the future.
Yeah, no, I
Um,
think like I mean in general, I think many artists like I mean I've worked with so many people and it's always like if you work in a team, everyone shares what they know and like you try to make each other's work better and
yeah,
it's also like I guess I mean I made two tutorials. It's so much work.
hmm
It's so much work and I would do more, but I don't have the time. It's
yeah.
just crazy amounts of work.
I'll make sure to everyone who's listening, folks. As always on the podcast, I always show obviously the artist's work on the background in like a slideshow, and just send me all your links to Tobias. And what I'll do is I'll include them in the description. So if anyone who wants to check out Tobias's tutorials, like he has a really awesome one on texturing. On like planks and so forth. So when it comes to like stylized, if you're interested into stylized artwork, that's a great one to check out. So make sure to check the links in below. And like I said, I'll include all his social media and so forth. I guess so. Obviously, carrying on with the subject of student education. Well, actually, I guess we can maybe tailor it around something different. I guess. Is there anything you've realised that university has like I guess completely missed out that I guess the university is looking for? I know it's a completely different question, but is there anything that you've realised that maybe like student education is so far behind. So like you were saying, obviously being up to date with trends and stuff. So obviously like the PBR. But has there been anything else that's kind of been like, oh, I didn't realize that? Like maybe if you had to relate yourself back to when you're at university, or is that a bit too much of a difficult question?
Um, I think so. Like, I mean, what I said earlier, I think the big problem still is like knowing what you're worth when you leave the uni, like your education.
Okay.
And because so many people don't know this, I guess they undervalue themselves quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that has to do with, of course, you want your first job, so you kind of try to get in, undervaluing yourself. But then for other people, that would be a problem because then like the general like salary goes down, and it's like, so I think everyone has a problem from that. So I wish like school would prepare you a bit more for like what do you do when you freelance, like what can you charge, like just learning a bit more about the business side of things, because that's also super important.
I think like what you're saying there is obviously like understanding your worth and stuff. Like it's such a big question, and I think the thing that makes it so difficult is the fact that like everyone charges different rates, and like every place, like for example, just your living accommodation is very different. In like for example, I live in a small city, whereas if I went down to London, the rates are like just completely different. And if you're starting as a beginner in London, like ouch, like that's like that's an interesting start to your journey, I'll tell you that. And I think it's like you said, it's like I think this is when the being able to acknowledge that just it's okay to start in the smaller studios, and it's like don't always be like I need to be in such a bigger studio. But like there's so much we can talk about this, and I'm really happy you brought it up, because I think like for example, one of the main jobs that a lot of people have been looking into because of how difficult it is to get into the industry is like the runner position.
Mm-hmm.
And but I've been getting lots of mixed opinions on the runner position. Like a lot of studios kind of I'm not sure what your thoughts are, or if you know anyone, but like supposedly.
So no, I've never worked anywhere where there's like a runner or anything, so I don't even. What do you do as a runner?
All right, all right. Okay, this is make it more interesting actually. So basically there's this thing. It's very I think it's very involved in film industry. But there's a lot of my friends who are in game as well have this runner position as well. So basically, what this runner position is basically like you're making tea and coffee, and it's like the lowest of the lowest. However, it gets you into the studio. However, a lot of people have said to me, it's kind of been like a contrast in terms of opinions, but basically people have been saying that it's like your stepping stone to going up the ladder. But then other people have been saying that it's like they take very advantage of you. So it's really hard to kind of know where you lie, because like the wages as well is very low.
Yeah, sounds like it.
It's like 17,000 to 19,000 a year, I think. Like 17,000, I think, is actually its average, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you're saying about valuing your worth. That's why, to me personally, like I wouldn't go for the runner, in the sense that like I feel like I've got to that level now that I kind of deserve a junior position.
Yeah.
And it's being able to acknowledge that you should be able to like believe in yourself, like trust yourself, and you shouldn't always have to rush. Like obviously, like it depends on your scenario once again, but it'd be great, like you said, if universities started bringing in more people, I guess, who are new to the industry, but can talk about their experience of like how to start off, if that makes sense, and getting them involved.
Yeah, I don't know. Like this runner thing, that sounds very. They take really advantage of you, because then you could spend your time doing like actual work or portfolio work, or even like your own work, to then get a junior position.
Mm-hmm.
Also, like if you become a runner, then anyone can become a runner, or do you already show your art then?
Yeah, like it's
So that's a bit weird.
it makes it difficult. Like obviously some studios are a lot more nicer than others, but I'm not sure what you're to say on this one. But when it comes to a junior position, is there like a kind of wage that you think's a good wage to start off with, like based on what you've learned, like salary wise?
Oh, I mean, that depends on that really depends on where you are. Like I'm in Stockholm right now, the rent is like extremely expensive, and also like living here is quite expensive. So I really don't know like what a junior position would pay here. But like what you said, the salary for the runner position, I think my first job was less than that.
Oh wow, right, okay.
Yeah, so it's really I would look up, like when I look for a job, I always look up. I go on Glassdoor. I look at the city, or I look at the, even if I'm not working at a big studio, but I look at the big studios what they're paying, and I just go from there. And
Okay.
I would always, like, if I would look for a job, if I look for a junior or whatever job, look for what they pay you, and I would always start higher. Like, I would always like go a bit over the thing you're expecting, because then they can come with another offer
Mm-hmm.
which might be less, but it's still okay for you.
Because like I think based on what I've been taught is that, like, well, based on what I've seen anyway, I think the average, it made obviously, like you said, every place is different, but I kind of feel like the average at the moment is like 19,000
For
um
junior.
for junior at the
Uh-huh.
moment. And if you're in a city that, for example, in Stockholm, it might depend, but like for example in London, I think most people try to aim for 23,000
Hmm.
in terms of like a fair, in just to survive basically, because like London is extortionate. And I think at the moment it's like minimum like £1,100 a month of like that could be without even sharing with someone. And like it's insane prices. But it'd be great, like you said, if university could kind of dwell more into these things, like the financial side of things, the true understanding of what it's like to actually work in the industry. And I think one of the faults that a lot of studios have, not studios, sorry, universities, is that they're not, like we said, are getting maybe up to date teachers, or people who are like really fresh, if that makes sense. And I understand it is sometimes difficult for these universities to get the right experience all the time, but it plays such a huge part in knowing where you sit. And at the end of the day, how could I say it? It could make or break your career, because if you're struggling financial wise and you're like, oh, maybe it's not the right, I can't survive off this, it could really stop you from pursuing your passion.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, that's awesome. We've that's a lot of great things that we've covered there, and it's a lot of different things as well. Um, I'm not sure. Well, actually, I've got a few questions from just people who's been listening. If you're okay with answering them.
Sure.
So one of the questions, he's actually from my good friend. His name's Eddie. He was actually asking about referencing. Has when it comes to just art in general, has obviously, like, we have Google and stuff, but has there been any main sources out there that's helped you decide on what to use as reference?
So it's funny because, like, I do stylized work a lot, but like when I have references, I still look at like what it looks in the real world, for example, because I want to look at things, or I want to make things that make sense. So
Mm-hmm.
I look for those in the real world, but also then I think just by watching a lot of movies and just consuming other kinds of media, you have something in your brain that you can go, wait, oh, I remember I've seen this, or I've watched this movie, and then you go back and look at these things. So but it's most of the time it's really just Google or ArtStation where I look for stuff, and then I just, when you kind of know what you're looking for, I think it makes it easier, but
Yeah,
you can also be surprised by what you find.
because like when it comes to like for example, my passion is like I'm obsessed with realism and making things as like obviously it's film that I kind of want to get into, and I'm very orientated about making things as cinematic as possible.
Yeah.
So I guess like the cinematic look is like the style for me. But like obviously, like, you have like your own style, and it blends perfectly for King. Like, actually, that'd be a great thing to talk about. Actually, is style just in general. Like did it take you a long time to kind of develop your style, or was it kind of like you kind of always knew what you wanted to do?
No, I mean, I guess it develops over time, and I, like, for a long time I was like, no, I don't have a style or anything, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just I think I figured out over time what I want to work on, or what I want my art to look like, and then also
Yeah,
like the kind of projects I want to work on. Uh, I guess we all have like kind of our like project or game or company we want to work, and
yeah,
but then at the same time, what do I enjoy? Because when I make art, I want to enjoy doing that. Otherwise, like, why would I sit here and do this and not do something else instead? So
mm-hmm.
I wouldn't worry about it too much in the beginning, and at some point you'll find out what you like, and then the style will just develop on the side, I think.
Yeah. Just take your time and focus on getting the job first, getting things on the go, I guess.
Yeah, it depends on the person. Like, just don't. I wouldn't worry about it too much in the beginning.
Awesome. So just to finish the podcast off, I always talk about, I guess, obviously we've covered it kind of pretty well overall so far. But if you had to make a choice for people who are listening, obviously it's a big question to make a choice, but would you always choose university over online courses if you had to make a decision?
Oh,
Like obviously this is your personal. It's obviously there's no like nothing against either of them, but the main focus for me is always to be like to kind of make the path as easy as possible, or at least get people's like people's industry's thoughts on like the two, if that makes sense. So it's just great to hear. Like obviously you're not like you have to do this, you have to do that, because obviously it's very it depends on your situation. But like for me, it's always been university purely because of the getting to know people.
yeah.
And however, the one thing I will say though about online courses that I think are a lot better is that I'm learning exactly what I want.
Hmm.
Obviously, it depends on like finding the right people for it, and I guess like one of the negatives I have against online courses is how much they charge sometimes. Like for example, the one thing I've kind of realized on average is that like the way they do online courses these days is that basically like you'll have a 1 hour session to talk with the actual mentor, and then the rest of the month is like weeks of or the rest of the week is like tutorial videos. Whereas the reason why I struggle with that system is the fact that like if you're paying like crazy money a month, um, it's those constant questions that you need to be able to ask that gets you anywhere. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So before I answer this question, I think so. I'm doing a mentorship at the moment
Mm-hmm.
also, and it's the same what you just said. You have your session like it's a 1 hour a week,
Yep.
which for me is fine because I'm already like I'm working and I have a job and I have like foundations here and there and
Mm-hmm.
like it's a bit more skilled in other programs. So I'm just doing this to kind of get better at one thing and then just I mean keep working because I already work.
Mm-hmm.
So for me this is kind of perfect because it's limited time. I have limited time. The mentor has limited time, and during the week I can focus on it myself because I already have some of the knowledge. So I wouldn't say I struggle so much.
Okay.
But then if you're just starting out and there's no one around you who can like help you or give feedback, and so that I can see will be a bigger problem. And then the
Yeah,
money investment is probably a bit more
it's a bit
it's
more
probably
difficult.
very, very expensive for you than if you say, oh no, it's only four times, like
Mm-hmm.
four 1 hour sessions, and I'm not even getting any hands-on help.
Yep.
So it depends on like when you think you're ready for that.
Yep.
Um,
I'm actually really, I'm really happy you brought that up because I've never really thought about it in that way because I think the reason, so my opinion's been based off so I've obviously been doing three, so I'm not a beginner obviously, so I've been doing 3D for quite a while.
mm,
So I think no, I'm really happy you said that because that gives it a perspective from, I guess I think online courses should be more for people who are I guess have at least a foundation in terms of I well obviously you don't want to wipe out all the people who are beginners and stuff, but I think it helps with I think the way the system's run for online mentors, it's more tailored to people who have at least a good understanding of how it works. Or would you agree or would you disagree?
I don't know. I haven't done a course for like introduction to something, but for
Mm-hmm.
many, like if you want to learn like modeling or something, you can. There's so much free videos you can look at. I know like that Substance Painter or Designer has like an entire library of video tutorials if you just want to start out.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you really want to start something, then it's probably just cool to look at those for free and
Yep.
then maybe pay some like later down the line when you really want to get into it.
Awesome.
But then I think I don't know like if there's any tutorials that actually teach you the entire workflow because you can learn a software, but then it's still not super useful if you actually make a game. So if you want to be an environment artist, you need to like model texture, you do the lighting, put it in an engine, make it run in a game, and then be also careful like how it performs and stuff. And I don't know if you can learn that in a course,
Yeah.
but I'm sure you can somewhere. And
Because
this really depends on you if you want to do that or not.
definitely, because one of the main things I've been trying to learn when it comes to online courses, which is obviously through the Gnomon workshop, is the balance between the technical aspect and the actual theory. And I think when it comes to, I guess the one thing that I'd be a bit more, obviously it depends. It depends on your skill set, but it'd be great to have more theory involved, because a lot of people watch tutorials and like maybe they follow something exactly, and like obviously it's great that you can follow a tutorial and stuff, but it's like understanding why you did it. Like for example, there's a lot of texture artists out there who are learning how to make maybe these great textures, but they don't understand like how the material is actually meant to react, or like how it's actually meant to do. So it's I guess when it comes to the online course, it's getting that balance between the theory and then the technical aspect.
Yeah, that's really, especially like for materials, it's a whole different thing to make a cool looking material and then actually putting it in an environment where you can have the most detailed grasp, but it's just like so distracting from everything else that like you're kind of learning to like have the balance and everything. So, but I guess that's also like experience over time. But to answer your question, I think sorry that took a bit of a detour.
On you go.
But I didn't forget. No, I would say like for me personally, it was really really valuable to go to uni because just purely for the people around. It's for me, it's so much better to have like students or friends with you where you have a group of people that work together. You learn about team building, teamwork, and also like you learn about giving feedback and receiving feedback, which I think is also super important. And you have your people there, and then the teachers will give you feedback, which I think could be problematic if you really just work on your own, on your online tutorial without even talking to someone. And then I think you will have a harder time receiving feedback, because even now at work, people will give you feedback all the time, and you have to kind of learn how to deal with that, or how like feedback is good, but then what do you do with it? This is something I think you already learn in university.
Yeah.
And then also the network you build and the opportunities that come from it is also really something that I would say, yes, university is really good.
Awesome.
But I think if you have the time, go to university. I think if you really want to speed it all up, I think online courses is way faster way to learn everything.
Oh, right, okay. Actually, well, that's actually a good. Okay, that's even better. I like how you said that, because that makes it. I never ever would think that. So that makes a completely different perspective. So, do you think it's just because obviously I did say earlier though that I'm learning more exactly. Like, you learn exactly what you want, if you know what I mean. So no, that's awesome. I'm awesome. Like, it's great.
Yeah, I think if you know what you want, then you do the online courses, because you can like filter or like select what you want. Like at uni, I couldn't choose. Like for a couple of years, I was like, I learned animation, and I was like, yeah, but I would not be an animator, but I have to do this and pass this, or I have to render like a still image, or like do some character, or like sculpt a character for almost a year. Which is also something I didn't want to do, but it's kind of, if you do like online courses, you can skip those.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I'm really happy you said that, because out of all the podcasts I've done so far, it's great to have a whole different perspective inside, like, because you've done both. Because when it comes to online courses, obviously it's like you said earlier, it's a mindset of making sure that you knuckle down and get the work done. And obviously that comes down to just you as a person making sure that you get the work done and prioritize getting your portfolio done. But it's like Tobias is saying there, it's if you can't afford the loan side of things when it comes to student education, obviously it depends on where you live. Like, I'm fortunate when it comes to Scotland, it's not anywhere near as some places. But if you're listening and you're right, like, I don't want to go to the education route, however I know where I want to go, then go ahead and give online courses a go. And like, there's a lot of great materials out there. Like I said, I use the Gnomon Workshop, so I'm paying, I think I'm paying £33 a month, and based on the amount of tutorials I get, that's pretty good.
That sounds really good, yeah. So, I mean, I don't know, I've never checked it out, but that sounds like, because I know like the they have an awesome school. So I think I'm sure the online stuff must be awesome as well.
Because it's like they had like the whole. I've never watched them before, but they had like the whole DVDs at one point. Like that was like a whole generation of like awesome material for so many people. Like there's one tutorial that I remember everyone talking about. It was like is it Joan of Arc tutorial? Yeah, I think it was Joan of Arc. I've literally heard like every character artist say that they've learned from this one video because they didn't have the resources at the time. They just watched this Joan of Arc and everyone became a character artist from it. It was crazy. No, but thank you so much for coming on, Tobias. It was awesome to hear about everything about your journey and what you've done. I'm not sure if there's anything else you'd like to bring up at all when it comes just to anything in general. Is there anything else you'd like to mention, or everything all good?
I think it's all good. I mean, if you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer. But
Right, I'm trying to think. Is there anything anything else I can maybe give you a difficult question based on my own experiences? Oh gosh, now I'm on the spot.
No, that's all right.
I'm trying to think. I'm just trying to think. I think we've covered like amazing like the main thing like I'm really glad that you said is that you've given a whole other perspective from the online courses as well, and this is the one thing I've always like I appreciate both. Like I have nothing against obviously like they're both valuable, but it's just down to how you utilize them. But yeah, thanks so much for coming on. It really means a lot.
Thank you.
Everyone who's listening, like I said, make sure to check out Tobias's work. They'll be included in the description below. If you liked the video, don't forget to leave a like, and as always, make sure to smash the subscribe button. It'll be much appreciated. And like I said, make sure to include your art links in the description below. And as always, folks, we will see you guys in the next video. So bye for now, and thanks once again, man.
Thank you.
Cheers.